Montgomery Community Media presents Small Business Network, brought to you by M&T Bank. SBN is also sponsored by Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation and Leadership Montgomery.
Hello and welcome to Small Business Network presented by M&T Bank. My name is Taylor-Leonard. In addition to being the CEO of Taylor-Leonard Consulting, I have the privilege of being the host of Small Business Network. Thank you for joining us on the live stream as well as here in the television studio. Each month we bring the business community together to network, to collaborate, and to share best practices in an effort to stimulate regional economic development. This morning, we have the honor of having our Maryland Comptroller, Peter Franchot, joining us this morning. And before we hop into our conversation, I just want to give folks here in the studio as well as on the live stream a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Kelly.
So Peter Franchot was elected Maryland's 33rd Comptroller in November 2006 and was overwhelmingly reelected in November 2010 and 2014. As Comptroller, Peter Franchot has been an independent voice and fiscal watchdog for the taxpayers of Maryland. As a member of the powerful Board of Public Works, Franchot has worked tirelessly to keep Maryland competitive in the knowledge-based economy, create a climate of economic equality and opportunity, and protect Maryland's parks, waterways, and open spaces. Fun fact, he is the only, you're like, what is that? He's the only comptroller with 3 beers named after him, which may explain his passion for the Reform the Tap initiative. So welcome, Comptroller Franchot. Thank you for joining us this morning.
I tell my colleagues that they may have some honorary degrees from colleges, but they don't have beers named after them. And I love the craft beer industry in Maryland, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's hop into it. As Comptroller, what do you see your role in terms of Maryland and business and small business in particular? And as we look at Montgomery County, how do you see your role impacting that community?
Well, first of all, the Comptroller's Office, it's a big agency. We have 1,200 employees, and we handle all of the revenue estimates. So all of the chief economists in the state are located in our agency. And I get all of the economic data on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So I'm intimately connected. In addition to the tax collection responsibilities of the agency, I'm intimately connected to the data that we're producing. Now, a lot of that is rear view mirror information we get, but we're pretty good at predicting revenues and observing what's going on in the economy. And we have a business advisory group of 30 or 40 leading business people that every time we're doing the revenue estimates, we get together with them, show them our data, tell them what we think is going on, and then they tell us in real time what they believe is going on in a forward-looking way or a real-time way. And so it's a big agency with a lot of responsibilities. You mentioned the Board of Public Works. We meet every 2 weeks. On average, we spend $450 million in state money on contracts. This is really a unique panel in Maryland, in the country. No other state has a Board of Public Works like ours. They have them, but they tend to be under the thumb of whoever is the governor because they're political appointees that make up their review boards. In Maryland, for better or for worse, we have the treasurer who's elected by the legislature, the comptroller who's elected independently by the people, and we have the governor who's independently elected. So you need 2 votes for any one of these contracts, and every one of the contracts over $200,000 at the state level needs to be approved. So it's action central for spending.
Wow, it sounds like it.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things going on with the agency that don't get a lot of visibility, but it's an honor and a privilege to be the comptroller, and thank you very much for that nice introduction.
Oh, no, my pleasure. So you mentioned the revenue estimates, so let's camp out there for a little while. Because I know you either are about to report or you recently reported out on the revenue estimates. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, we reported yesterday on the
Okay.
revenue estimates for the fiscal year we're in, which we're halfway through, and then the fiscal year the legislature will be voting on in several weeks that starts July 1st. And that is a big responsibility for us, and obviously the federal tax cut, I don't call it reform, but the federal tax cut has caused all sorts of changes in our revenue estimating. And so in order to prepare for that, we took 2.5 million returns from 2014, the last year that we thought was semi-normal without some unique thing happening. And we actually put those 2.5 million real tax returns through our system with the simulation of the federal tax cut. So we delivered to the governor and the legislature real information about what is going to happen. And it kind of surprised me, frankly, because 71% of Marylanders were seen to benefit directly from the federal tax cut as far as the federal side of it.
Okay.
26% on the state side are going to have to pay extra because of the way they handled the standard deduction. So we gave the legislature specific numbers, which is we're talking $430 million windfall to the state of Maryland on the plus side next year. And what we did yesterday was write down this year by $39 million, which is really not that much. It's kind of a decimal change. But we wrote up the revenues $430 million for the year starting this July. I happen to put my own opinion into it, which is, dear legislature, and governor, the money that you don't return to Marylanders of that $430 million, the rest of it, if you insist upon keeping it, bank it, because we have really no idea how the economy is going to adjust and react to these tax cuts. I hope, obviously, like everybody, that it's going to be very positive. But a lot of people are claiming that it was an unnecessary tax cut. It's going into a very turbocharged economy anyway, and that we need to prepare for the inevitable recession. I hate to think of that because that's bad news, but I was going to tell your folks today that just like I'm urging the state government not to spend all the money they have, they shouldn't spend the money they are going to receive from the federal tax cut and the new non-corporate business, whatever the term is, and the new accelerated depreciation and all of the benefits that are going to come down to small businesses. I would urge them to be very, very cautious because of the fickleness of the economy right now, and we just don't know how the public's going to react. I hope that consumers are shopping and buying lots of things, and not on the internet, but on Main Street in the wonderful small businesses we have in Maryland. But that is, I think the jury's out on that.
Right. So, and you bring up an interesting point, because as consumers, we hunger for convenience, right?
Right.
But there is the challenge of, okay, do I go down Main Street or do I shop online? And like you naturally are saying, you need to go down Main Street. How have we seen that sort of the internet and the play of the internet, and that then takes us down that path of Amazon H2Q? You know, how do you see that impacting the state? And so longer term, we know Amazon has its sights on the DC metro area, Montgomery County in particular. And I know you can't go into a whole lot of detail about it, but I would love to just know more about what your thoughts are. I mean, of course, there's the obvious benefits of jobs, 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 but what do you see as the longer term potential impact, both positive and maybe not so positive, with a large enterprise like that potentially coming into Montgomery County?
I think I'm going to send a letter to Jeff Bezos and say, you locate Montgomery County, I'm going to name a couple of beers after you. Obviously Amazon is a once-in-a-lifetime game changer, and I am so delighted that Ike Leggett, the county executive of Montgomery County, who I believe is one of the finest public servants I've ever met in politics. I mean, we're going to miss Ike's thoughtfulness and his level-headedness, and just a wonderful person. And even though he's endorsed Rashern Baker, the county executive of Prince George's, to be the next governor, he's worked very closely with Larry Hogan. Yeah. And they're really working to present Montgomery County's best face, best foot forward. And I just applaud those two for being adults and being willing to put aside the very toxic political environment we have and link up and present a common face to Amazon. I believe Amazon's going to pick Montgomery County, and I'm not saying that just out of selfishness. I'm saying it because I think all of the stars are lined up. They need to be near Washington, and they need to be in an area like Montgomery County. Now, having said that, the internet itself, you mentioned convenience, has absolutely devastated Main Street. And not only have they done it in an economic way, they've done it just in a absolutely rude behavior. There are people that show up at our wonderful small businesses all over Maryland, and they walk around looking at merchandise, and then right in front of the store owner, they'll click on Google and try to buy it right there from an out-of-state internet company. I mean, that's just bad manners, number one. Number two, it's unpatriotic. I mean, really, come on, guys. And so I've placed a huge emphasis on promoting shop local, buying from Main Street, get down and understand the reality of having a small business, having to pay rent, having to hire people, having to do all of the ordering and the difficulty of keeping your head above water, and then the insult of having somebody basically use you like a catalog and order something. Yeah, is it convenient? Sure, but when you remind people that the convenience has a real consequence, negative consequence on small business that have to pay the rent, they tend to do the right thing. And so I'm constantly reminding people, get off the internet, shop local. Never have I seen a Little League team with Amazon on the back. Now, that's not a negative about Amazon. I'm just saying these small businesses are the heart and soul, the backbone of the state's economy, and also they strengthen our communities.
Absolutely.
So it's a long-winded way of saying I think the Supreme Court is going to, in April, when they hear the case, we're affiliated with all the people saying that the Supreme Court's decision in the 90s was just plain flat out wrong, and they need to reverse it, and they need to level the playing field between the out-of-state internet companies and the in-state mom and pop retailers. And I think they're going to do the right thing. God bless them, because Congress can't organize a two-car parade.
Because that's too small, maybe.
I don't know. It's, it's just dysfunctional.
Right. Gotcha.
But Maryland's a bright spot because we have so many, such strong economic bones, and we have so many great people that live, particularly in Montgomery County. So I'm optimistic for the state's future, given all of the static that's going on in Washington. But we also have a tradition of being a middle Atlantic state and having a middle political and fiscal outlook. And I think that is beginning to sink in on both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, that in Maryland we need to represent the 80 or 90% of our citizens who are right in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's a developing phenomena. We'll see if it'll be tested in these elections coming up in November. But I'm very happy and lucky to be the comptroller in a state that's got that kind of tradition.
Right. You're the comptroller of the state, but you're a resident of the county. So, no pressure here, but share with us what you think makes, from an economic development or an economic forecasting perspective, what do you think makes Montgomery County uniquely different than the other counties that you're fortunate to sort of support?
Well, it's the economic breadbasket of the state. I mean, I love Howard County and Baltimore County and some of the other states that claim that, the jurisdictions that claim that title, but let's be honest, we are it. We are the economic engine for the state. Prince George's is a kind of partner with us, but Montgomery leads the way. So we have great people, great educational facilities, we have great assets as far as you know, the skilled workforce that we have, and we have all of those things. The only thing I would recommend, if Montgomery really wanted to distinguish itself in a positive way, and I'm not saying they haven't done it, but in my agency, it is a fireable offense if you don't, every employee doesn't demonstrate the 3 R's, I call them. You have to respect the taxpayer, you have to respond to the taxpayer, you have to get results for the taxpayer. Otherwise, please, go get another job.
Wow.
And it works because people appreciate clarity. I'm not saying Montgomery County doesn't have customer service, or Tacoma Park, my wonderful municipality, doesn't have good customer service. They fined me the other day for not shoveling my walk, and I said, but there was only a 1/4 inch of snow, guys, come on, where's the common sense? But that's okay. I don't mind.
They're looking out for your health.
Yeah,
That's a cardio,
yes.
you know, instead.
But if Montgomery County could do what we've done, we answer 750,000 phone calls a year on our 800 number. It used to be the same old elevator music, and we'll get to you, and yes, we're trying to get to you, oh, and by the way, we're glad you're still on the phone. Now, if you call that 800 MD number, within 40 seconds, you will get a live, friendly, professional employee of the Comptroller's office on the phone who is on your side to the extent it's appropriate, and people appreciate that. We have $3 billion in refunds that we are in the process of giving back to Marylanders. It's their money. We average 2.1 business days upon receipt of their tax return and putting your money back in your bank account. I mean, no other state in the country comes close to us. So I think people appreciate the customer service. I'm not saying Montgomery County doesn't do it, but to the extent they could improve upon it and make it highly visible, I think small businesses and ordinary citizens would appreciate the sense that they could at least communicate with a real person, even if at the end of the conversation they don't get what they want.
Right. They're heard, right? That's
They're
part of the
heard,
thing, is people just want to be heard.
And you know, I keep saying to my fellow politicians who have big ideas and big vision and all sorts of expensive programs, which God bless them, I support most of them. But how about just answering the damn phone?
Right, it's the little things. Right?
But to say that I'm a champion for small business is a real understatement, because I really appreciate the risk-taking, the frustration, the difficulties, all of the impediments to having a successful business, and all the joys of having a successful business that gives you some dignity and independence and financial solvency. I mean, that to me is America at its best, and I just wish we could be a little more supportive and visible in our appreciation to the small business community.
Awesome. So I have one more question for you, but at this time, if you all have a question, you can make your way to the mic so that we can take questions. Reform the tap.
Yes, reform on tap.
On tap. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so here's the bad news is that I happen to be the chief regulator of alcohol in the state. I didn't realize this was part of my responsibility, but we have a police force that regulates petroleum, tobacco, and alcohol products. So in that responsibility, I've grown to appreciate what's called craft brewing. What is craft brewing? Those are Maryland-based, generally family-owned, small breweries. They currently are about 85 of them in the state. They have 6,100 jobs associated with them. $228 million in wages are paid. They have a tremendous reputation and are magnets for millennials who like to come to Maryland just to tour the little craft breweries. They tend to be located in off the beaten path industrial areas, and they are just fabulous examples of American innovation and entrepreneurship. Well, we have in Annapolis a very barnacle-covered alcohol lobby that is made up of the distributors of alcohol and the retailers, and they basically represent the out-of-state alcohol companies and who use these in-state people as their allies. And they have developed an absolute stranglehold over the legislature. I mean, they don't even bother to go and lobby. They just sit in the back room and write the bill and then give it to the legislature. Okay, so they have been a real problem as far as allowing these small breweries to produce great beer and sell it to consumers. And there are a million different ways they have interfered with that, as far as their operating hours, as far as their franchise laws, as far as everything. I mean, the whole thing is just a protectionist racket. So we have proposed legislation that clears away all of that underbrush and would make Maryland the #1 go-to state in the country for craft brewing. I believe I think it's 600 million in economic activity that's represented now would be quintupled within 4 years if we could just remove the harassment. Does it involve public safety? No. We're not talking about new beer being consumed in Maryland. We're just talking about the beer that's consumed should be made here because it helps the economy. Plus, it's a lot better beer. Okay, so we've launched this big effort. It's now in the legislature. If anybody wants to get involved, it's House Bill 518, and it's caused quite a brouhaha, to pick a bad word. But it's everything to do with protectionism versus entrepreneurial freedom. It has nothing to do with public safety. It's similar to this crazy system Montgomery County has with the Department of Liquor Control. That should be abolished tomorrow. The county government should get out of the alcohol business. It is a huge wet blanket for new restaurants and new businesses coming into the county. And people say, really, it's that bad? Yeah, really, it's that bad. And this is a monopoly that the county has that they skim off profit from. And talk about lack of customer service. Go down to Ray's the Classic, my favorite steakhouse in Silver Spring that's closing. It closed a week ago. And you ask Elliot, the owner, why are you closing? He said, I'm so sick of dealing with the DLC. He said, I have to go out and buy bottles of spirits from the local county store a block away from me because these guys can't get their act together to deliver product. And it's every bottle of beer, every bottle of wine, every bottle of distilled spirits has to be touched by this county system. It has to be in there.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, if you wanted to instantaneously launch Montgomery County into the 21st century, get rid of that organization.
Wow.
Yep, and they get $25 million in revenue, ransom I call it, from that agency. But they lose hundreds of millions of dollars of investment from people that will not move into Montgomery County and open a new restaurant because they don't like that DLC.
Interesting.
Anyway, with all due respect, I've probably made everybody angry on that one, but
so let's go ahead and take a
the
question.
You mentioned the Board of Public Works, and I guess I'm the face of one of the small businesses in the state that has experienced what we were not aware of, which was a provision that if a bid didn't have multiple bids, then when it reached the Board of Health, there would be, the Board of Public Works, there may be difficulty justifying the state authorization to move forward. And so in transparency, we experienced last fall a bid of this nature, which we were not aware until the very last moment in November, that it had not had multiple bids, and consequently it was shut down. And so I just wanted, maybe for transparency, for you to clarify at the Board of Public Works what small business needs to know to avoid kind of that. I'm not sure we can avoid it, but to manage that,
Sure.
because it's a heavy lift for us to have that happen. And then the second part is maybe you could just speak to the relationship that you might envision University of Maryland, which is a big knowledge solution enterprise in the state, working with small business, because in the area that we specialize in medication management and pharmacy, that seems very undernourished at the state level.
Great. Well, your company sounds very innovative, and there are lots of things where I think the state could employ, obviously, your talent, and the university system is very important to us in that regard. On the single bid issue, I served for 8 years under Martin O'Malley, and there it was always 2 votes for whatever was before us, and whenever I would periodically object, I was always the 1 vote on the other side. On fiscal issues, such as the predominance of single bid contract awards generally to incumbents, vendors, and I described it as an incumbent vendor protection program, the RFP process, because these RFPs seemed to be created so that there was only 1 bidder. So I'm excluding your thing, which is the opposite of that, and just saying we had hundreds of single bid contracts. Some of them were for $600, $700, $800 million. 1 bidder, the incumbent. Okay, so I would say no, that's not good. We need to have competition, because the agency would say, we can't tell you what a great deal we're getting here. The state of Maryland is really benefiting, because you won't believe what a great price we got. And my retort was, prove it to me. Get 2 bids. We have gone from hundreds of single bid contracts to 20 maybe in a year under Governor Hogan. Because now when I say I would like to reject this contract and urge them to go back and get some competition, it's 2 votes yes and 1 vote no. And God bless him, because it's his own agencies that are reporting these things. But there's no way to correct it other than to just say no. We still have a few of them, but they have been reduced by almost 70% just because of the new membership of the board. And it's not a Republican issue, it's not a Democratic issue, it's a absolutely rock solid, I think, approach to, okay, competition's good, let's make sure we have it. But I'm sorry about, if you want to follow up with me offline on your situation, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, and can I follow up?
And actually, on that note, we're going to need to wrap things up. Are you able to hang out for a little while?
Oh yeah, no,
longer?
I'm happy. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to wrap up the formal program, and I just want to.
Did I say it was an election year?
Thank you so much for
Kelly.
joining
Thank you,
us
Kelly.
this morning. This concludes this morning's Small Business Network. Thank you so much for joining us on the live stream as well as here in the television studio. I invite you back next month, April 19th. We'll be together again, and Stein Sperling's tax practice group will be sharing with us the impact of the new tax law on entity selection. So you want to make sure that you join us back, same time, same place. Thank you for joining us, and have a lovely day already.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.